All right, we are going to get started. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I know it's the morning after Bash, so I can see a lot of droopy eyelids, but I appreciate you showing up this morning. Super excited. I am Adam Morgan, Executive Creative Director at Adobe, and today we are going to talk about real lessons in creative leadership. And you know, over the years, I'd say over the last 5, 6, 7 years, there have been a lot of presentations at different conferences on creative leadership or leadership in general, but a lot of it's been more of theory, right? We're going to talk about, imagine a day when we finally have a seat at the table, and we talk about getting that seat at the table, and how do you prove it out a little bit. But a lot of it's just kind of theory. So I thought this time instead, that's why the word real, I'm just going to go through a lot of personal lessons, personal experiences, just practical magic that I've seen, you know, and how you can get a little bit more creative leadership at your company. So that's the premise of this presentation. So thanks for coming along with me. And we're going to start out. Let me start out with a story. So it was about 2 years ago. I was at an Adobe leadership all-day experience training thing, and I was surrounded with people from all different facets of the company. So we had engineers, developers, we had finance, ops, and then me, you know, someone from the creative department. And part of that whole presentation was all about, all right, you know, dig deep. And maybe many of you have had this experience where it's like, what's your mission statement? What's your personal value that you bring? What is it that you're all about? And kind of it's really those soft, touchy-feely things, right, that you're trying to figure out in leadership. And for me, I thought, this is great. This is easy. You know, I'd get up and say, well, I believe in creativity. I believe in this. You know, these are the things that I stand for. This is the value I bring to the company. And it was very easy for me to just talk about those types of things. But as I was sitting at one of the breakout tables, this one gentleman who was a development ops, he just leaned over and he said, Adam, I don't think you understand. Like, you're acting like this is super easy. But for me, and a lot of people like me, whether you're an introvert or you're just an engineer or analytical, he's like, this is really hard. This is really hard for me to think outside the box, to think about all those feely stuff. Like, I'm used to logic and code, and everything just matches up, and it's all perfect, right? And so the takeaway for me was, we as creative people are just different, right? We're wired a little differently. And you know, think about in some of those terms. You know, you've listened to the keynotes, and there's this new age of creativity that's coming around. But think about in terms of how we all react to it. I mean, most of us want our work to be felt by other people. We want it to be of value. We want to show how much, you know, we can connect with other individuals. I mean, who here is working on the next great American novel? There's got to be some people out there working on that, or a screenplay, or you want to build the best amazing website that's ever been seen, right, and win amazing awards. Anyone want any of those things? Anyone want to make an awesome documentary and make people cry? Like, just those are the things that we care about as creatives. We want all of that stuff. We want to connect deeply with people, right? We care about the emotions. We care about the feelings. And that's really important. So when it comes to creative leadership, the truth is this: all of those things we want, all of that magic and emotion and connection is not going to happen, especially at your company. Like, maybe your side project takes off, maybe. But most likely, most of us, and how many here work in-house, just by a raise of hands? A huge amount of us are working in-house, right? The realities are, you want all of that to happen with your day-to-day work. You want the website, the email campaign, the big ad campaign, all of that stuff to be awesome. But if you don't have good creative leadership, whether that's you or someone who supports you, none of that's going to happen, right? And we're going to talk a lot about what are some of the walls that we hit, what are some of the challenges we have as creative people to get those ideas out into the world, because it takes a lot. And I'll tell you right now, you could go to, IDEO, that did the design-led thinking thing. You can go to their website and watch a video for $500 and get a certificate that says you're a creative leader. Like, that's one way of doing it. But to me, it's like creative leadership is so much more than that. I mean, and for those who haven't had that position, it's really challenging, you know, looking up to it, but it's just a totally different animal. I mean, it's a mindset, it's a passion, it's something different than the craft that you've grown up doing, than just doing the work, right? It's just a totally different set of skills. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. All right, so first let's just set the landscape a little bit. So a lot has changed as far as creativity and leadership in the last 10 years. So when I started my career back in '95 at an ad agency, the landscape was more of like agencies helped, and there was a lot of creativity at agencies, but in-house there was very little. And you did not have a leadership position for sure at most companies. But I would say about 10 years ago, the design-led movement has changed everything, right? It's now, the information age. It was all about finance and operations and all of those kinds of things. But now today, people are seeing the value of experiences, that going customer first rather than product first is really, really critical. And so getting that representation of the customer and understanding their feelings and their journey is super, super important. So companies are understanding that. The design-led movement has just blown that up. And now I'm seeing this huge trend where there's so many people. A lot of my friends from agency are all moved over in-house. And why are they moving? Because there's ownership. There's a chance to lead. There's a chance to guide your product, your brand, your experience, and make something of it, rather than just being the set of hands that sits in the back room in the cave and just makes things pretty, right? That's what it felt like in the 90s. Like, unless you were on some rock star, making big campaigns, you were pretty much stuck in the cave. So, in addition to that, I've also seen a lot of articles and a lot of trends where it's not just creative directors that are finally getting a seat at the table, but there are people with creative pursuits that are actually getting higher positions. So I'm seeing a lot of CMOs who have backgrounds in creativity. A lot of founders of startups and companies have a creative background. And the reason why is they also see the value of those experiences. They also see the value of like, today the way we're going to compete is through experiences. That's it. That's how we have to do it. So there's this huge shift, which is awesome for us. Huge opportunity for us as creatives, and I'm speaking us. There may be other strategists and other people out there, and that's great too. I'm just saying, like, in general, as a community, there's a huge opportunity. The problem is, if you follow 99U, it's one of our online magazines. We also have an event. There was this interesting article from one woman who said, sure, we had a seat, but we're squandering it. We're not stepping up. We are, we finally get this opportunity, this great chance to lead, and we're not leading. And the reason why is because we get up there and we don't understand business and finance and all those things, and so we cower and we go back to what we've been doing before, and we make things pretty, and we become a set of hands again, and we're really not being leaders. So how do we take advantage of this awesome opportunity and not lose it, right? What do we need to do to make sure that creativity has a seat at the table and is doing something about it? All right, so here's what I'm going to go over today. These are kind of the three parts of today's presentation. First, I'm going to talk about what is the difference between leadership and creative leadership, and why is creative leadership important, and what are some things that you can learn from that to find out like those benefits. Next, practical steps of how to get a seat. Not just talking about why we need creative to have a seat at the table, but how can you do it? I'm going to give a lot of examples of what I've done in the past, and this is creativity, like when I say seat, figuratively seat. Think of it in terms of, sometimes it's the main leadership of companies, sometimes it's, I need to have a seat at the table at the email campaign or the ad campaign or whatever it is with the project you're working on, so you feel like you have some guidance and ownership and accountability on those projects as well. So practical steps there, and then finally, okay, now that I've convinced everyone and I'm there, what do I do? How do I maintain it? What are some good, solid leadership processes? All right, so what does it mean to be a creative leader? There's a lot out there on just general leadership. And I would say a good lesson for many of us is to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. I mean, one great way we learn is by seeing how other people are doing it in different industries and different settings, and then apply that back to us. So absolutely, there are a ton of books. I'm going to mention a bunch of them later in this presentation. In fact, I may even just say, like right now, at the end, I'm going to show you how you can get the deck or information more about this, so you don't have to feel like you're feverishly writing notes or anything. So there is a way out for that. I just saw some panic in a couple of faces. I was like, don't panic. So going back, like there are a lot of great books out there on leadership. And even if you're looking right now, when I'm talking about these CMOs or others who are kind of trying to understand, because they're terrified because it's like all the old tricks of just operational fixing is not working anymore. It's like I can't make my supply chain any tighter. That's not going to be the way I win. I have to come up with great experiences for customers. So they're sensing all this, and they're trying to solve it all. Like, they're trying to figure it out, and they're trying to think creatively. So we have to kind of do it the same way they did, but the opposite direction. Meaning, we as creative leaders, it's not enough anymore to just know how to make great art or great writing or great video, right? We have to step over and understand finance. We need to understand statistics. We need to understand, metrics. All those important things. As a leader, you can't go back to the cave. I'm going to repeat that a lot of times because that's a big problem. When you step into leadership, you can't just kind of do your solo thing where you're used to just getting in the flow and designing stuff. That is phenomenal. If you want to do that, that's great. But that's not this path. That's not this path. Okay, so there are a lot of great things that we can learn from other leaders. But what I want to talk a little bit about first is what makes you different. What gives you a superpower that's different than what all of them? And a little of this goes back to, so you probably saw in or those little postcards, it's just a thing later on today about my book. I wrote a book that was all about proving the value of creativity, but using science, right? And in that, during those years when I was researching that, there were a lot of, there's a lot of neuroscientists and things that I studied and talked to and interviewed. And one thing that I really discovered that is so true about all of us is, let's think about like the creative lifestyle that most of us have had. Like, we go out, we watch all the movies, we read lots of books, we really enjoy all those things that we just consider soft entertainment and fun because we relate to them, right? You like to paint, you like to get your hands dirty, you want to go to art galleries, you want to go to museums, you want to get out in the world and just, experience it all, feel it all, right? Does anyone get that? Does that ring true to you? Like, to me, that is, like, I just want to engage with all that stuff and part of it is like filling the well. I had a friend in one of the early agencies I worked at that every movie ticket, every, thing he bought that was kind of pop culture, he would save it and use it on his taxes as a write-off. And I was like, what? What are you doing? And he's like, no, this is my life. Like, my life is filling my head, filling my well with all of that stuff. So later on, when I go to do campaigns, I can pull it out and write a great headline or design a great ad or whatever it may be. That's my job. And so I take it very seriously. That's part of how I do it. And I was like, if your accountant is good with that, that's great. I've never done that. That seemed really interesting. But if I think about the truth of it, that's really true. Like, that's what we do as creative people, right? Now let's compare to how the CEOs or the CFOs have been growing. So after they left kindergarten and realized, all right, I don't draw anymore, they've been focusing on like their MBAs or finance, and it's all about numbers, and it's all about data and really figuring out operational excellence and all of this stuff, right? I took, over the last few years, I've gotten a master's degree in integrated marketing communication, so in strategy at Northwestern. And I did that on purpose because I'm like, all right, I'm a creative. I've had good 20 years of creative experience, but I need to learn a little bit more of the other half. I need to understand how they speak and what they're learning. And I'll tell you right now, they're not learning how to be creative. They're learning from that master's program. It was all about good metrics, good strategy, good planning, all of those good things. But I guarantee that the CFOs and the CEOs of your company have not been trained in creativity like you have. You have been training your brains to understand and react to emotional experiences. That's really the neuroscience of it. That's what you've been doing. All of that movie watching, all of that book reading, all of that stuff you've been doing, that trains your brain over and over and over to be super sensitive to emotional experiences. And when I say emotional experiences, that's the same thing as creative experiences. Like, that's really, when you break it down, that's what they are. Creative experiences are emotional moments. In fact, Brian Sauls had an awesome definition for it in his book, The X. And it was, an experience is an emotional connection to a moment. That's what an experience is, an emotional connection to a moment. So that's what you've been doing. That is a huge superpower. So when you go to CEOs and they're afraid of creativity because they don't understand it, they don't understand, it's not logical to them, right? Like, it's this weird thing that they haven't been in tune with. And so I just want you to all just give yourselves a pat on the back, and I want you to realize how powerful that is. We're going into the creative age now, the experience era. It's no longer about the information age. It's not about pushing numbers and metrics. All that stuff's going to be automated. You have a power that's amazing, and it's all about emotions. So just keep that in mind. That is super, super important. And now I'm going to tell you why it's not important. Because creative leadership is not creative execution. Yes, all of those skills that you've done throughout your career, how you've zenned into it, that's helped you build up your creative muscles, but that's not necessarily what creative leadership is. So this is really, really hard. This is really hard for people, I've seen as they've transitioned from, a senior creative into a creative director or into a, whatever it may be. It's really hard because, like when I do something good, I just go back and I get into that flow state and I do my thing, right? And in leadership position, it's hard because you're not going to have as many opportunities to do that. It's no longer about you, it's about protecting the others so they have that flow moment. So that's why with creative leadership, it's gonna be a different animal. So it's hard to transition, it's hard to do, but you have to learn to balance those things. But at the same point, having that background is critical. That's how you get there. You don't get there without your superpower. All right, next, I wanna go through, this is Admo's philosophy on why creative is great. Now I want to go through a McKinsey report. So McKinsey, they are like one of the top research firms in the world. And I met the guy who did this report at one of our Emmaus summits. And it's phenomenal. Like I'm just going to go through, not the whole report, but they even broke down of like companies that have solid creative leadership, like they're 67% more profitable, right? Like they have data on why creative leadership actually works. But I want to go through 4 points as to the why. Like thinking beyond it so that you have an argument of like, here's why creative leadership is better, not just because of some statistic, right? I want to dig deeper into it. So let me just hit on these 4 points. Number 1, they hardwire creativity into their daily practices and innovation. So if you think about what I was talking about before, where you've like trained yourself and you care about all this stuff, tell me if this rings true, at least it does for me. When it comes to creativity, creativity is not an option. When you're at work and you're feeling like you're not being creative, most of us go off and most of the creatives that I know, it's like, all right, fine, I'll just do a side project. I'll do a passion project. I'll do freelance. I'll do whatever it takes to scratch that creative itch. Like, I have to do something creative. I can't not do it. Does anyone feel that way? Yes. And so it's not a choice. And many of you probably went through all the recessions, like 2001, the big recession, 2009, all that stuff. And what happened during those recessions? When things got tight, what does management cut? They cut the budget on marketing. And we would all go, idiots, why would you do that? Like, you're killing your brand, and for what? Like, of course things are gonna snowball down because you're stopping that. Instead, like, what they found is people, like creative leaders who are in a position of power, they don't see marketing or advertising or creativity as an expense. They see it as an investment, a different area in the business, right? And so when creativity is an investment, you have to do it. There's no question. So when time comes to make tough decisions, you'll cut some other operational thing rather than the creative thing because you know it matters. And there's no question about it, you have to do it. That's one reason why creative leaders are important, because they understand the value of those experiences. They're not just gonna just push it down. Number 2, all right, they are customer fanatics and they connect emotion. Oh, there's one thing I want to say back on this one. Innovation. So sometimes the word creativity is really scary for some CEOs or CFOs, but if you use the word innovation, suddenly they're in. They're like, oh, I get that word. That's not weird. That's not scary. So human ingenuity, innovation, whatever you need to do to get past them, that's usually a better word. All right, customer fanatics. So we talked about this emotionally. What's another aspect of this? People watching. So as I've watched creative people over the years, they love people watching. And why? Maybe I'm learning about character development for my novel that I'm working on. Or maybe I'm doing this documentary, I'm like, all right, how do people react? Or I'm doing TV spots and I want to understand dialogue and how people talk. Or maybe it's, just this other photography piece and I want to capture that moment of that deep emotion on their face. We like people watching. We like connecting. We like feeling it all, right? And that's really, really important because when you're building, a plan to go out there with products, like instead of coming at it as an engineer would be, which is product first, we're going to come at it customer first. We're going to come at it from that journey, that experience, what they're going through, and that's really, really, really helpful. Number 3, let's see, they turn insights into action and they're faster at this. So at least from my experience growing up in the ad agency world, I became an idea generation machine, right? Where I would sit down and I'd write 100 headlines or come up with 100 TV spots, come up with reams and reams of ideas so I could present it to my creative director, figure out what the top 3 or 4 are, go to the client. Like, it was just that whole cycle. And then they'd kill them all and we'd start over, and it was great. It was like you put out all these ideas and then all your babies are killed right in front of you, and you're like, that sucks. Start again. You just get thick skin. Has anyone had that experience where you just go through that cycle? So why is that valuable? Because when it comes time, think in business terms, like once you become a creative leader, when things aren't working, you can pivot. You can say, that's not working, let's try something else. I understand it. I'm not going to, go to the deathbed with, falling in love with my first idea. There are a lot of, entrepreneurs, they'll come up with one idea and they're just like, I'm stuck on that idea. There's no other option because I've been thinking about this for 10 years, right? Whereas creative people are like, no, we can come up with another one, that's fine. There are always more ideas out there, we can create more. And so we're good at pivoting, we're good at understanding, going for one, and maybe instead of even if you're coming up with a business idea, you're gonna think of like 100 of them before you settle on one, rather than just the first one you've thought of. Because you have the discipline of continuing on, finding the better idea, digging deeper into the next idea. That is super valuable. So we're good at coming up with ideas, and we're faster at pivoting. At a leadership level, that's critical, that's huge. And then finally, number 4, they create and manage a great ecosystem of other creative people. And the truth behind this that I have to come up with is that we all have imposter syndrome. How many of us think, I suck? All these other people around me, they're so good. And then you get on Behance and you're just trolling and you're like, oh, that was so good. Man, if I could have I can do that? No, you can't. Yes, I can. It's this roller coaster. I've explained it to one person. It was like, my creative journey has been like, I'm the best, I'm the worst, I'm the best, I'm the worst, I'm the best, I'm the worst. And it's just this constant roller coaster. And so you just have to learn that when you're down, like it's gonna go back up. And when you're up, it's like, keep a cool head because it's going back down real fast, right? And so we're used to that. We have this imposter syndrome, and we're always looking at everyone else. And even while you're here, sitting at tables, getting to know other creatives, because we care about, it's not just me, it's this community, right? We're gonna connect with everyone, and I'll see who's doing all the awesome work. So what's the value to business then? Why is that really important? Well, think about it. When you're in a company, it's like, all right, we gotta get a video produced, or we gotta get out there and market, or we gotta do this thing. You're like, I know who to contact. I know where to go. I can find the people. I can get connected. I've got friends over here. I've got some connection over here. Like, we can get the stuff done, right? That's super important. Because so many other people are like, I have this idea and I know how to handle the finances. I have no idea where to start. We as creative leadership know where to go. We know what to do. We can execute on all this stuff. So I hope that was helpful. Those were 4 reasons why creative leadership is important to a company, and the bottom line, and it's not just fluffy, feely stuff. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, now that we know that it's important, how do we get a seat at the table? Practical steps to getting there. So these are the 3 steps I'm going to go through. First, you need to figure out if your company is even capable of creative work. Next, then you need to prove out the need, and you have what we call the creative chats. And then finally, prove that you're capable of it. All right, so this is a tough one. Inevitably, even happened yesterday, every time I go and talk somewhere where I'm saying, here's why creativity is important, here's why it matters, here's why you need to have more of it. Afterwards, someone will walk up to me and she'll say, hey, I work at this trailer manufacturing company, and the CEO, he just wants to pump out as many trailers as possible, so how do I get more creative, more creative in that company? Like, I'm stumped. And there was a book called The Discipline of Market Leaders by Tracy and Wiersma. And it was written, 15 years ago. But these 3 little sections, operational excellence, customer intimacy, and product innovation, those are the 3 basic business strategies that are out there. And this has been proven out. I'm not making this up. This is just the 3 different types of categories of businesses. And when I hear people talk about it, inevitably what happens is most of the people who have all these problems with their company not valuing creativity is because their operational excellence model. That's what their business is all about. Let me describe those 3 quickly and then tell you why that matters. So with an operational excellent model, it's all about efficiency. It's about getting product, getting lots of product at a very cheap price, getting it there fast, and call it a day. Think of like a Walmart. Like, it's just mass. Like, it's all about the chain, supply chain. Customer intimacy is different. So instead of going to Walmart, it's all about just go, 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 and you buy a bike there because it's cheap. You would go, for customer intimacy, you'd go to a bike shop, and they'd measure you, they'd try it all out, they'd custom gel fit your butt to a seat. They'll do all these things to make you feel comfortable and have a great one-to-one experience. That's customer intimacy. And then finally, the third one, product innovation. That's like Adobe, where it's all about R&D, design new products, get them out there, and it's just innovation, ideas. Of those three models, I've found personally, this is not gospel, this is just my experience, the second two, customer intimacy and product innovation, are great for creativity. But operational excellence is not. It's really, really hard. A good case study of that was The Gap. So The Gap in the 90s, it was all about these ads, the white shirt, the white background, standing for something, caring, community. Like that's what the brand was all about. And then they were purchased by Old Navy. Old Navy's model is opposite of that. Old Navy is fill the store with as many products as possible, pump it out, and just do it fast and cheap, right? And so they hit this big problem where it was like, what model are we going to have for Gap? And if you noticed over the years, Gap kind of went, because they were trying to figure it out. And the truth is, maybe they should have just gone with the Old Navy model. I mean, that's a great model, and they're making a killing. But they were stuck in this middle land of like trying to figure it out. And some may say they should just cut it off and run it as a separate business and keep the customer intimacy model. Great, whatever it is. All I'm saying is I know someone's going to come ask me afterwards and they're going to say, my company, I have this problem, but just think about that. The first test you have to decide is, does your company even have the DNA to do creativity? And if it doesn't, then you have to make some tough choices. If you don't know what your company model is, look at the board or the owners. What's their background? Is it in operations, in finance? What is it? Guaranteed, most likely, that they're going to be following the model from their background. All right, there's a cool book by Shane Snow called Smart Cuts. And the one takeaway from this that I think is really, really cool is he's talking all about how it's not a matter of like just going through all the steps and paying your dues and getting there, but there are ways that people have innovated to come up with ideas and move faster, and one of those is the platform that you're on, right? You've got to be on the right platform. So in this context, if your company is not the right platform, find a new platform. If it is, and you just need to do some refinement, then do it. Go for it. But just keep that in mind. Sometimes it's a hard choice. You may need a new platform. All right. Once you've decided if your company is capable of doing more creativity, then you get to the point of what I call the creative chat, where you're going to talk with leadership and kind of battle it out, right? And not necessarily with leadership, with whatever, your stakeholder, your client, your whatever. Just keep in mind this is multiple levels. And I would say step one is when you're assessing the company, you need to assess what the leadership perspective is on creativity. Do some, discovery, ask questions, find out what they think, what they care about, what they're doing. And you've got to be prepared for this next step. And the one advice I would say is don't do this when it's hot. Don't do it when there's a current project that's going on. Like you have a big event in a month, and suddenly you bring up, you're frustrated because the CEO is killing all the good ideas, and you're fired up and you want to run up to the office and say, this is why we need to have creative ideas, and you're such an idiot. Don't do that. Don't do it when it's hot, because I'll tell you that what's going to happen is you will fail. It won't work out. In my experience, you've got to wait till things simmer down a little bit and then go out with a level head and then prove it out. Shoot for next year. Shoot for the next one. All right, so another interesting thing I learned when I was doing that grad program is there was this persuasive communication class that I took. and there was an interesting thing that I learned from it. I'm going to go through these 5 different types of persuasion because there are different people. Some people are hostile, some people are friendly, some people are neutral. We're going to go through all of those. So as you're thinking about your leadership, figure out, are they hostile? Are they friendly? Are they uninformed? And I'm going to go through examples of how I've done this. So we're going to take a minute to just go through this. All right, the first one is hostile. What if someone is just like, no, we're not having creativity. That's stupid. It's fluffy. I had a client once, and in fact, the whole reason why I wrote that book is because one of my clients, his boss was this sales guy who's like, no, marketing is just fluff. It's worthless. Just put a billboard out there that says what we do. Done, right? And did not believe. And so that's why I took 5 years to how do I give an answer based on hard science as to why that's the wrong answer. But I'll give you more of those points later. But let me give you this one example. So a smaller level example. At Adobe, yes, even at Adobe, this happens still all the time. The creative company, we still have fights over creativity. There was this one woman, a strategist, and we were doing a website for this certain industry. And she was really, really mad. We had heard through her email. She was just fired up that we're bunch of idiots. We don't understand the tone. We don't understand what was supposed to be communicated. And it was crappy writing and a crappy design. And why don't we level things up? And just like we knew it was just going to be a fight. So when I met with her finally, I said, all right, we started out, and I just said, all right, we're going to not even talk about the problem thing right now. I just want to talk to you about us and our relationship. I explained, here's some of the things we agree on. We both want an awesome page. Don't think for a minute that we're over here thinking, how can we make a terrible page and see how she reacts to it? No, we're not doing that. We were trying to do our best and writing our best and designing our best. So once we established, we're on the same team here, we both want something awesome. We're just coming at it from completely different perspectives, and let's see if we can figure out a common ground. Then I demonstrated expertise. Then I said, all right, my experience in doing pages like this for decades, here are some of the things that happen. Most often when we get into these fights, it's not about the copy. It's about messaging. 95% of the time, the problem is a messaging problem. It's not a writing problem. So even though you're blaming that it's terrible writing, that's not it. Let's analyze it. We broke it apart and realized that there was one aspect that we were not talking about that she thought was super relevant and important for that page. And because we had missed that, it was all wrong and it was all stupid. She was getting mad because we'd missed the mark. And I was like, that is great. We will fix it. We will change it to that. But let me tell you another thing that I've learned from expertise is if ever I have 3 or 5 words that are all together in a sentence, because she just wanted to add adjectives. The most amazing, powerful, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's not going to fix anything. That's going to make it sound more corporate. Anytime you have more than one technical or jargon word in a sentence, it sounds corporate. So you're fine if you want to just space those out. If you have 3 words you have to use, I'm just going to use 3 different sentences, and I'm going to give it some space. That's my rule. And when she realized, oh, that's the rule. You're not taking away my toys. I just have to space it out. Things calmed down. We rewrote it, hit the right messaging. Huzzah. Everything was great, and we had good ideas. So that's one step. Break it apart, see what they're doing, see what the problem is, and see if you can't, in a nice level-headed way, just demonstrate your expertise, show some evidence as to why you should do it. Let's say you're going for a higher level. This is one of those, I get this question all the time. My boss just doesn't believe in creativity. How do I prove it? Well, here's the good news. We have so many studies now that show why emotion and creativity are valuable. Just like that stuff I talked about, creative leadership. These are all stats from studies that are all about why creativity and emotion are important in marketing and in business. So I'll go through this quickly. The first one, 211% earns more. So that was a study where they compared creative companies against the S&P 500, and over 10 years, the creative companies outperformed the S&P by 211%. That's huge. The next one, 94% of first impressions are design-related, not your product benefit related. Meaning when this was a research done in UK, that when people see your stuff, the design matters, that emotional experience matters. The other 306%, 23%, and 15 times, those are 3 different studies, one by Qualtrics, one by IBM, and one by Nielsen, where they studied a whole bunch of ads, and they found that if you have ads or experiences that are emotional, your chances of sales increase goes up, your chances of lifetime value goes up, your chances of being recommended goes up. In a big way. This is not just a little bit. This is huge. So if you need stats, email me. I'll give you my email a little bit later. There are plenty of studies to help prove that out. All right, what happens if your audience is neutral? It's they're good. They can go either way, but they just keep choosing the easy path, right? It's all about ease. So this one is you find that time for the creative chat. Let me give you an example of how I did this one. So at one of the agencies I worked at, we had an investment firm. And if any of you have worked in finance or you work in finance, you know that compliance will kill you, and there's just always these problems of how do you be more creative with money. Money is not funny. Excuse me. So here's what we did. We decided to plan a planning retreat when there wasn't any project going on in the fall. And it was in Utah. We were up at Park City because the theme was all about taking ideas to new heights, right? So we were setting it up. This is the big theme. And we got them up there and then just did this huge presentation on here's why we want to try some different ideas. Here are a bunch of ideas that would work great. And we just really immersed them in all these creative ideas and creative thoughts. And it really helped. They finally got it and they're oh, okay, there is a better way. They felt it. And here was my trick of how to make them feel. When we're talking about this emotional experience, so 2 of them were terrified of heights. So I said, we're just going to go to an undisclosed location, and we're just going to have a fun activity. So I drove him to this airplane hangar, closed the doors, got him in there, had a flight instructor come and give him jumpsuits, and then got him on a plane, and we went skydiving, right? And there's no way they would have ever done that. Never. They were so terrified. They were just like being herded onto the plane and sat on there and just like totally white-faced. That was so great. That was so much fun. And then shoved them out the plane, made them skydive. Of course, with the tandem, they weren't on their own. But they were terrified. In fact, at the end of the day, though, the funny thing is they were finance guys. So the one guy his only question afterwards was like, is this more than $200? Because according to the FICA, like I can't have a gift that's more than $200. You're fine. You're fine. But later on, like he came up to me later and he was just like, I will never forget that retreat. I will never forget that because I put them through trauma. Right? They got PTSD out of it, which was great, and they never forgot the creative ideas. So it was really, really important. So that's one trick. Terrify your client or your stakeholder. All right, what if you don't want to terrify them? Here's some other great proof points to give them. This was a study done by IBM, 1,500 CEOs, 60 countries, 33 industries. And the number one thing that would make the difference in the next 5 years, creativity by a long shot at the top. That's coming from the CEOs. They get it. They know it. Another one that just happened 2 months ago. This is really interesting. So CEO of Apple, CEO of Amazon, CEO of JP Morgan, so many, like dozens of other companies. They got together and said, you know what? This whole model that we've been doing over the last 2 decades of it's all about the stockholders, and it's all about hitting that number the next month, and it's all about the bottom line, that's not the right model for corporations. Corporations should care about their people, they should care about their customer experiences, and they should care about what they're doing to the environment and what they are as a company, and making sure that they have sustainability. That's what corporations should be all about. So this is happening right now. This is happening in our lifetime. That's so cool that emotional, soft stuff is important. It's no longer just about the numbers in the operation. All right, what if they're uninterested? So for this example, when I was at Publicis, I had a regional bank, and my client he didn't care. He didn't care about anything. He just wanted to get all the stuff done. And so the same thing, we set aside a time where there was no project going. We went and talked to him. And for this one, it was all about like a crash course in creativity. It was like we did a little mini training for a day. Here's what great campaigns look like. Here's what creativity does. Here's how it can help. Here's why it has so much value. And here's what it can do for your brand. Here's some other, banks that have done some awesome work. And after that kind of crash course, the client was like, I get it. This is great. Like we supported it with facts, experts, like all these things. And after that, for the next year, our client relationship was awesome because he would be like, here are my goals. Here's the thing I need to do. You're the creative experts. You just tell me what to do. Like, I trust you. I totally get that you'll do the right thing because you proved out how much you care about it and how much you're into it. So that's all he wanted was great stuff. It was awesome. If you need another good proof point, here's a great book to read if you haven't read it. A Whole New Mind by Daniel Pink. Why the right-brainers will rule the world. And his whole point is like the information age is over. Like the information age where, we were told, go be a lawyer, go be a doctor, go be, an accountant, whatever it is, that's how you're going to have a great job. Those are the jobs that are going to be replaced by AI. It's already happening now. Those jobs are being automated. Your taxes is being automated. But the jobs that are not are the creative jobs because engineers can figure out how to make a cool thing, but unless we make it beautiful or functional, no one's going to buy it because we live in the age of abundance. People can go on Amazon and buy anything they want right now. Done. And why are you going to buy one thing over the other? Because of aesthetics, because of functionality, because of design, because of stuff like that. So just keep that in mind. Again, your superpower is super valuable. In the age of experience, the era of experience, it's going to be more and more important, so you're in the right place. All right, what about uninformed? This one, quickly, I've had this experience often, where either had a client or a stakeholder, and an example I'm going to give you is a startup. And this startup, the president came to me and said, all right, we were trying to figure out what the brand value was and how you can communicate what the brand is all about. And all he kept saying was, oh, it's all about this product benefit or this thing or this thing. And I kept saying, no, stop it. You keep coming at it from the product point of view because that's your background. Here's where I'm going to help you. First of all, How am I credible? I've done this for many other tech companies. I've done this for decades. I know what I'm talking about in terms of trying to get the right brand value. Number two, I'm going to keep it simple. I bring the emotion. I bring the customer experience. You bring that product stuff. But when it comes to what the value of the brand is, it's not your product benefits. Why will people care? What are they even thinking about? Why does it matter to them? Why does another tech thing matter to them? Once you understand all of that, then the president is like, I totally get it. I totally get it, and we went down the right path. So it's sometimes just a matter of just explaining a different perspective. Another great book. So this is when, like that CEO who was just like, I want to make all the decisions, I know everything. How many of you have like a boss or the owner of the company that's like, want to be the quarterback or micromanagers to make all the decisions because they started this company, they know how to make all the best decisions, right? So there's been research on this. Who should be telling you what the best creative ideas are that you should use? And I'll tell you, so this is Adam Grant in the originals, great book. But the study basically researched this, and they said, number one, there are two audiences that are the worst at making creative decisions. Number one, it's you. If you're the one who came up with the idea, you're the worst judge because you're too close to it, you care about it too deeply, you can't see past yourself. So don't think that you can come up with the idea and be the best judge. The second worst is a CEO or someone who has never been in the trenches creating ideas. They don't get the process, and they're just coming at it blind and just making choices, right? They're also the worst, and they should not be making creative decisions. The answer is that it should be someone who's been doing the work, who's a peer, someone who's also doing it, and so they get the troubles you've gone through to get there, but they weren't the ones working on the project, which to me is like the perfect example of that as a working creative director. So if you have a creative director who's done it and does it, and then but isn't working on the project, that's why as a creative director you shouldn't like always be doing all the work. You need to back off so that you can be a good judge of good ideas. Super valuable. So if you have that kind of a boss, have them read this book, have them see that study, and then talk about it. All right, what if they're supportive? So the last agency I worked at, like the second biggest agency in Utah, they were supportive. They loved creativity. They were an agency. They were all about it. But we didn't have a creative leader. And so I took a long time, and I really thought it through. And I went to the president of the company, and I had this huge plan. And I said, all right, here's what we need to do. Here's how we need to help the internal team. This is the type of training we need to do. Here's how we need to get the silos broken down internally. Here's what we need to do for clients. Here's what we need to like. And I had this huge document of all these steps and goals for the next year of all the things that we needed to do. And I'll tell you, if you have someone who's receptive to that, the president was just like, done. You're ECD. Make it so. And the reason why is because they're like, if you can prove out that you care so deeply about all these things, that's something they don't have to do, and they can trust you to do it. And so it's that last step. Do you have a detailed action plan? So many people want to be in a leadership role, but they don't do the homework to get there. They're just like, I've been here for longer than any other creative, therefore, it's me. And that's not the answer. Remember in the beginning, it's not creative. Leadership is not creative direction. Sometimes the best creative leaders are not the best creatives. I've met many of those where they were better as a leader than they were as a creative, and vice versa. The most talented person is the worst at leading, right? So keep that in mind. Have a plan, do your homework, be ready. We're going to talk a lot more about plans here in a second. All right, once you've had those creative chats at whatever level you're at, once you've convinced them, and if you haven't, go back and do more homework, go back and figure out what they care about and try and figure out the right answer, or move to a different company. But once you've done that, next you have to prove that you're the one. You can do it. It's not just, and maybe it's not. Maybe you want to prove it out and say, we need to hire and get someone in here to be a creative leader because I have good self-awareness to know that it's not me. I'm not ready. I need a lot of time to learn still. Or they may just bring someone above you and level you down, and that sucks. And that's probably because you haven't done this step. Why me? So first is you need to have a plan. You need to have vision. You need to understand where the company needs to go. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And then you need to work your butt off, and you need to earn their trust. Because there was a moment even at Adobe, we had this design conference a year and a half ago. And Shantanu, our CEO, was up on stage, and we were doing this Q&A, and someone was asking about, hey, there's this other cool thing. We want more ownership for creativity. And his point was like, I believe that, but that doesn't mean that I'm just going to hand it over to you. You have to prove that you can handle it and that it's the right move, and then we'll make that choice. So that's what it is. You need to earn trust. What's a good litmus test if you've earned trust? One that I love saying is, if you no longer have to ask to be invited to meetings, if they automatically invite you because they're like, we need that person there, 100% because they'll figure it out. They know what to do. That's a good indication. So make sure you earn their trust. Next, be a strategic partner. Don't be a prima donna. So many times I've seen the CD get up there and be like, power to the head. Oh, I'm so awesome. And then just be a total goofball. Just don't do that. Be a strategic partner, be level-headed, and be helpful. The more you learn to talk business or talk khaki, as we say it at Adobe, with all the people wearing khaki pants, if you can talk khaki, you can relate to them. Be a good strategic partner. And then finally, how to be a creative director. So I had a presentation last year that was the 9 steps of how do you become a creative director. I'm not going to go into that at this time. In a minute, later on, I'm going to give you my email. There were plenty of people who emailed me in the last session and said, give me that presentation. I'm happy to do that. So contact me later if you want to know more about what does it take to become a creative director. All right, let's say now you've gotten through all those creative chats, you've worked through all those emotions, you've gone through all those relationships, and you finally have a chance for leadership. Or even just, they're like, fine, we'll do an email test with creative. Let's do this thing. So the next step is when you get a seat, what do you do? And this is problematic. Like I have this line underneath, manage up, manage across, and manage down. Far too often, when I talk to people or when I see their examples, they're just managing down. They think, all right, once I become the creative leader, all I have to do is manage this team of creatives and make some great work, and voila. But that's not the case. You have to do up and you have to do across. So we're going to talk about all 3 of those things, mostly up and across. All right, what does it mean to manage up? I've been talking a lot about some of this stuff, like with Shantanu. Like, you have to set expectations. You have to have a plan. You need to have a vision. If you don't have a vision, no one's going to care what you think. You've got to have something that you can work to. In building a vision, here are a few tips. Because I'm not going to have the right answer. Whoa. So here are some good lessons that I've learned as far as like having a vision plan. So number 1, my boss at one of my agencies, he said this. First thing you do is you need to understand how your client or how your business makes money, period. How do you make money? Is it a service? Is it a product? What is it? If it's a service, how can you improve the service? If it's a product, what's the customer journey? How can you fix that? You need to understand how creativity can impact it. Because if you just go off and start making documentary films and put them on YouTube because other companies are doing it, you're done. You're going to lose your seat and you're squandering it. How do you make money? Figure out how you make money and then retroactively go back and figure out the customer journey of how they spend money. And then you can find spots along the way and you can easily just walk yourself through that journey and say, oh, here we go. I get to the website and I'm hit with 3 forms, or I have to log in 10 times, or I have to do this experience. Like, you'll figure it out. And then you can fix that, and it'll improve the bottom line, and you'll be a hero. That's step 1. How do you make money? Number 2, when you make this plan, again, I just started talking about that. Make sure it's customer first. You represent the customer. How do you put yourself in their shoes? How do you go through all of your experiences? Because you may find it's a digital thing, it may be an event thing, or it may be an email thing, whatever it may be. Think through that whole process and try and find the gaps. And I guarantee when you find those gaps, you'll be able to fix them. You'll be able to make a better experience because you can feel it, you know it, you've gone through all of these things. So it's like this is your opportunity to be the yang for their yin. So if they're going to think about products and benefits, you're going to be thinking about customer experience and emotional. Next, creativity has changed. When I started in the 90s, it was all about how do you get attention? How do you get people to look over here? Anyone who worked in the dot-com bubble boom, it was like a million of us trying to do ads that were just all about shock value, right? Get attention, get attention, get attention. Well, the landscape has changed. Again, that whole thing of abundance that Daniel Pink talked about, it's also abundance of experiences. So Jay Kunso has been talking about this for a long time. It's like back when BMW started making short films, we were like, what? That's stupid. What are they doing? And now MailChimp is making movies just like Netflix. Everyone's a media company. And the reason why is because it's not about getting attention, it's about holding attention. Jay had I don't even know what the number, he had this huge email list, and he cut it down to 1,000 people. He just eliminated them all. And from that 1,000 people, he actually made more money than when he had a massive list. So it's quality. It's how do you keep the attention of those people who care, because they will be with you longer and make you more profitable and have a better experience than if you're just shotgunning to the masses. So hold attention. So when you're thinking through your vision plan, how are you going to hold attention? How are you going to keep people engaged? How are you going to keep them loyal? How are you going to make an awesome experience? And it may be completely non-traditional ways of doing it. Here's some other things to think about when you're making your plan. All right, so again, what content is needed? For me, when I started out, it was all about ads and radio and media. And now, I do way more thought leadership and content where it's like people are coming to our site or are getting engaged in different ways. So what is the content? There's so much more about content creation now rather than just advertising. All right, what is your problem? Do you have a storytelling problem? Is it just like direct and straightforward product and benefits and you need to put a little more emotion in there? You need to engage that fast emotional system in their heads rather than the slow logical system? Or is it design consistency? Maybe you need a design system. If you went to Paula Scher's session, creating design systems may be important. That might be the thing you need, and make some consistency. I know for me, a mix of those two. When I first joined Adobe, we had acquired so many different companies that the copywriting was completely inconsistent from one group to the other. And so I had to create a design system for writing in order to keep everyone consistent, and it was super, super valuable. Next, deeper customer experiences. We've talked about that. Or what if it's internal stuff? What if it's like our teams are not talking, our teams are separated, like there's all this communication issue. Just those are some questions to get you going, because I have no earthly idea what your problems are or what your vision will require. But just start asking questions and start coming up with a vision and coming up with a plan and think deeply about it and you'll find some answers. But I will give you this advice. Start small. Like, don't try and boil the ocean. An example, when I talked about when I came to Adobe and there was like all these different fiefdoms because there were different acquisitions, I also noticed that the creative department didn't feel unified. Like there was a writer over here, two writers over there, like the writers were not unified, or even some of the designers, because everyone handled it differently and they had people in different groups. So I started what I called the weekly creative workshops. So every Friday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, so that all our different offices can meet, all the creatives come together and we're going to get inspired for an hour, period. And I'll have different people talk about different topics. Maybe one's a book report. Go read this book and tell us about it. You go look at this cool website and tell us about it. You talk about meditation. You talk about whatever, some cool project that you worked on in video. How do you write better scripts? And it was hard at first, but after a while, everyone started to come together like, oh, I totally love learning about this. I love learning about that. And it became this community that now they're like super protective of it. Like, don't you dare cancel that meeting. It's my favorite meeting all week. And even if we're talking about like stuff that has nothing to do with our work, like dialogue and character building in novels, Adobe's not writing novels, right? But it still helps. It still helps you think about that and get inspired. So find some small ways that you as a leader can bring people together, make the work better, improve things, just 3 to 5 things, and then just go for it. All right, that's managing up, expectations up, making sure that you're talking khaki, you're getting leadership on board, you're understanding what they need, and you're not rolling your eyes when they start talking finance. That's also a hard thing, but just get in the groove with managing up. What about sideways? This is another big problem. You come in as a creative director, but all the other directors in the company, they've done things their own way for 15 years, and they don't trust you or believe that you're the one that needs to be doing it, and so on and so forth. So when I talk about managing across, usually what it involves is building a system, what did I call it? A creative leadership model, so that the rules are established of how you're going to engage with the creative team. Because you don't want to be seen as a service organization that's a set of hands that they can come to you because it's supposed to be faster internally, but if not, they can go around you and go to an agency, right? And get their crap done and then just ignore you. That's not what you want to establish. So again, you have to establish some relationships, trust, but I'm going to talk to you about 2 models. I'm really excited about this. This is like the thing that I cared about in making this presentation. Is like showing you these 2 models and how you can apply them and get buy-in from those other leaders to the side. So the first one is what I'm calling is just owning the creative execution. So this is how we work at Adobe, and it wasn't easy getting there, but it's an awesome model. Here's how it used to be. For 20 years, when I'd go to a client, there would be a marketing manager or whatever, marketing director, and they would own the whole department, the strategy, the brand, the metrics. They'd run the agency relationship. They'd have a creative team, but they'd make all the calls, all the shots, everything on creative. And again, going back to some of these examples, they probably shouldn't be the ones making the creative decisions, right? But they were. My example in going to getting a master's degree at the best strategy university in the country, I know they're not being taught that. So what did we do? It took us a while, but we split it. We said, okay, when it comes to strategy, we love strategy. You guys are in charge of all this stuff. Plans, metrics, data, operations, brand strategy, you own all that stuff. But we're your strategic partner, and we own the execution. We own the words and pictures, period. Anything that goes on the website, you can talk all about the messaging, but when it comes to the final headline, that's our call. Why? Because we proved out that we as creative leaders understand this. We've been training in this. We know it all. We own I have some agency partners right here. We own the relationship with the agency partners because it's an extension of our team to get all that creative done, right? We own creative strategy because it's not just brand strategy. There's also creative strategy. Where do you go? What do you do? So the voice and style and kind of policing the brand, like that's what we own, and it's been phenomenal, and I love it. If you can get to a place where we can get more companies using this model, it would be fantastic because then it takes you as a creative director out of the cave and stop being a set of hands, but you got to step up, and you've got to own it, and you've got to make sure you're managing your P&L, you got to make sure you're understanding all this stuff and being a strategic partner. But at the end of the day, like after we've been doing this for years, they all get it. They're like, good, I can focus on the stuff that I'm good at, and I don't have to pretend like I understand every little bit about creativity. I don't have to like go out and chase the video team to make sure they're doing the right thing. The creative department will handle it. We got this. So strategic partnerships, critical. This is a really cool model. I hope a lot more companies can adopt this. All right, what about the next one? Today in the age of data-driven marketing, it's all about, all right, what's the data? We don't have to use our guts. We can go to the analytics, and we can figure out exactly what we're supposed to do. And that's the model, right? That's what we're all talking about. Well, I'm going to share, this is from my friend Steve Babcock. He was the chief creative officer at VaynerMedia. And this is another cool model of when we're talking about data-driven creativity, what are we really talking about? And there are a lot of other people talking about this. Alex Bogowski, if any of you are connected to him, he's been talking a lot about how every creative aspect is really like science. It really is like we're going to come up with a theory, and we're going to kind of test it out and go for it. So follow me on this fun journey and tell me if any of you have experienced this great experience here. So this is what the process is like today for many of us. And I got to come over here so I can see. All right, you start out with a plan. Then you get the agency involved, and you're saying, all right, we got to kick off this project. We got to give them a creative brief. And then we're going to start developing the strategy. The strategists go off for a couple of weeks and interview from some people, kind of see what they're doing. Next, we get the brief. We brief the creatives. We say, okay, here's the idea. This is what we need to do. Come up with some ideas. They come up with a whole bunch of ideas. They share it with the CD. The CD hates them all, kills them all. So they go back and they start over, and they do come up with some more ideas. They get it all together, and we're finally ready for a presentation. We go to the client, do a big dog and pony show. Awesome ideas. And then during the meeting, the client's not on the same page, so they're fighting among themselves. No, we're supposed to be talking about this. No, we aren't. We're supposed to be talking about that. And they fight, and I've been involved with those conversations from that side too, both sides. Anyhow, we finally figure out that we're not on the same page, so we redo this whole thing, start over, we go rounds and rounds and rounds. Finally, we get a round where the client hates everything but one idea. Huzzah, success. So we go out, we do a bunch of focus groups, a bunch of people that are grumpy because they're after work, sitting in a room, just tell you what they think, and we finally get one approved, and we're like, hooray, we made it to the gauntlet. We go into production, we spend crazy crap loads of money. The director totally has a different idea and decides to go a different direction. So the client freaks out, and then the director banishes the client and all the agency to Video Village, and you can't get involved anymore, and you just have to stay off to the side. The director wins and just does whatever version the director wants, drives off with all the money. Then we go back and take the footage, edit. Eventually, we approve cut 143, which of course goes with a generic media buy. Everyone hates it all, and then we start over. Right? Is that the journey that some of you have experienced? And here's what we want to break apart. Where's the data-driven part of this? I guess you could technically say focus groups. Focus groups. All right, there are books written on the fallacies of focus groups. People get in there, and they're not really telling you what they think. They'll tell you what they think you want them to think, to tell you, and then you're just all confused, right? Like, it's just terrible. Focus groups, that's not good data. That's bad data. Or maybe when you were doing develop the strategy, maybe that's probably actually the only part that you got some good data when you're interviewing customers and seeing what they find or what they care about. So how do we do a new model? How can we really make our creative data-driven? So Steve had this really awesome example. He's like, let's learn a lesson from the media companies. So often we're like, we're a media company, everyone's a media company. But what do the real media companies do? When they start a new season, they go out and they produce dozens of shows, dozens of pilots. They put them on the air. They put them out there in the world, the real thing, and then they see how people react to it. The ones that get good ratings stay. The ones that get bad ratings, they get rid of, right? It's very simple. Why don't we do that? I mean, think about focus groups. Seinfeld failed in focus groups, and so many other shows fail in focus groups because people don't know how to handle new ideas or new things. We don't know how to react to it. There was an awesome quote from Bill Bernbach, the father of modern creativity, and he said, we're so busy measuring public opinion, we forget we can create it, right? People don't know the new thing until they see it, and that's why focus groups fail. But if you just put new things out there, we can see what works. So here's the new process. Start out, here's where you get your first set of data. You go out and you know, just like Adobe Analytics is one of the biggest analytics companies out there. We go out there and just get insights from customers. What do they care about? What are they clicking on? What are the motivations? What's the behavioral data? Behavioral data. Figure that out. And once we know what they care about, then we make volumes of ideas. Make. So for VaynerMedia, they would go out and make not one campaign and test an A/B. They would make 5 or 6 campaigns with 3 or 4 ideas for each one. And you start with something cheap like social media or an email campaign. And you put that stuff out into the world. You don't go through that whole process, like I said before, and wait till the CMO likes or dislikes it. It doesn't matter what any of us like. It matters what the customers like. So stick a volume of work out there. Do tons of banners. Even ideas that you hate or you think won't work, just put it all out there. Make it real. And then test that. See which ones are working. The ones that work, make more of it. Make a lot more of it. It's like doing a season of it. And then go all in. That's when you spend your big media budget. Once you've tested it all out and you have a campaign that's resonating, and you've got data backed on it because it's coming from real people and real experiences, then you can throw a ton of money at it and then make it big time. That's a better model. It's hard. I'm even trying to do it at Adobe. I'm not saying that this is a great model that I got from VaynerMedia. We're going to try it. We're going to experiment on it, but I would like a lot of you to try it too. So and the awesome thing about this is it puts the control back in the creative's hands. You don't take a bunch of your babies and you put it at a focus group and they all die because they are getting bad data. You come up with a whole bunch of stuff and put it out into the world and then see which ones are going to grow up, right? That's how we should do it. And it's not scary or weird. It's like, this is awesome. We're all in on data-driven if we do it this way. Okay, sorry, we're finishing up here, managing down. All right, this is what I call building the creative machine. Because when you become a creative leader, it's no longer about your portfolio. It's not about you. It's about your team. Your job should be to create an environment, create the right, bring in the right tools, bring in the right people. You have to build a machine, and you have to make sure that when you're managing it, all the parts and pieces are working. It's not just about, when we think early on as a creatives, it's like, oh, I get to manage other creatives and tell them what to do and make all the decisions. That's not what leadership's about. So again, this is part of that 9-step ways to be a creative director, but here's just a few things to think about. Like when you're executing your vision, you've got the vision bought off by above, you've got a model in place for sideways, but in managing down, what kind of work are you going to do? Do you know what it is? How are you going to scale? Are you going to use an agency to help scale? Are you going to build up your team bigger? What are you going to do? Are you going to mix up all of it? What are the processes? How do you save files to the folders? How are you going to make sure that all your assets are in the right place? Are there guidelines and standards? So if you have teams all around the world, how are we on the same page? What about growth? How are you going to deal with career paths and making sure everyone feels happy and they have an environment that they feel like they can take risks? How are you going to manage all that stuff? So if you want more on that, email me. But these are just some things to think about. Managing down we're not going to dig deep into that, but I think you'll all get that, but just make sure you're thinking about the holistic part. One thing that's really important that I like to focus on, I had an old creative director years ago, and he used to always be, like if we had a client that was in healthcare, he's always reading these trade mags for healthcare, and I was like, what is he doing? Because most of us creatives, what do? We go to the design websites, right? The design magazines, the creative things, and we just get inspired from it all, and we're not focusing on the other stuff. We're like, the account people or the strategists, they'll take care of all that stuff. I'm telling you, no. If you're the leader, you need to go out and read all that stuff. If you want to lead, you have to read. You have to read. You can listen on Audible as well. I'm not saying you have to actually read. That's fine too. But you have to absorb all that stuff because like my creative director, when he would get into a meeting, he could speak eloquently about those topics, and he's on the same page as them. It's part of speaking khaki. You have to understand it, so you got to read it. So read to lead. Like these first two, if I were to say, if you were to start somewhere, Leaders Eat Last and Radical Candor are awesome. Mix those two together. If they were one big book, that would be a great place to start as a leader. But go out and read other ones. Good to Great he writes like a scientist. It's not the best, but the principles are awesome. And then talking to strangers, how do you talk to people on your team? How do you talk to others? How do you present? There are a lot of great books out there. In fact, if you sign up, like in a minute, I'm going to send you my email or my website. And I try and send something out every month or so. But if you sign up for it, I'm going to be sending out my book list of like a picture of the book and all the description of what they're about for like 50-something books, if you're really into that. It would be a good book reading list. Anyhow, read to lead, read to lead. It's not about you, it's about the team. But don't forget, as you start to become a creative leader, don't forget your creative superpower. Keep going to those movies, keep going to the Comic-Cons, keep, spending a weekend writing a novel, designing something cool, creating a new app, whatever you may do, get your hands dirty and don't leave that, because that's your superpower and it's going to help you throughout your whole career. So keep doing that, keep filling the well. All right, here's my email address. For those of you who are extroverts, this is the one page you should take a picture of. You can email me. I can give you a copy of that or links to the 9 steps to be a CD, or we can just chat. But let's say you're an introvert. Look at this, a landing page, which is great. You can just go straight to the landing page, and you can download the deck, and you can sign up. I think it's just a little form I set up. If you sign up, don't be afraid. You'll be lucky if I send you 6 emails a year, right? That's just my newsletter. So if you like this kind of talk, and this kind of content, I just keep trying to send out articles. Or follow me on LinkedIn. That's the platform that I'm usually always sharing stuff. Next, so I learned in a long time ago that having a Q&A, this is the part where I'm supposed to do Q&A, but I'm not going to do it because one person will ask something and you'll all just be trapped and you have to listen to their question. So here's how I'm going to save you from that. I'm going to end it in a second, and anyone who wants to ask a question, you come up here and we will yap it out for as long as you want. But I want the rest of you, if you can, do your survey, please. Because if you enjoyed the content, I hope you enjoyed the content of this session, the more that our Max team understands that people want to hear about creative leadership and creative career stuff and not just how do I get better at the product, it's important to send a message saying, let's keep doing more of this. So if you go on and do a good survey, that'll just help tell us, let's do more of this, and that it was enjoyable and you got something for it. So when the other people are coming up and doing their questions, you can do your survey. And plus, you could win cool prizes, right? Last of all, on your seats, there was this thing out at lunch today at one of these restaurants just across the street here. Stoke, one of our agencies, is putting on an event. The first 125 to sign up on this URL get a free copy of my book, and then we get to have a wonderful lunch where you're not in the lines with the grab and go. That said, I think there's only like 25 spots left, so hurry. If you're a creative director and you want to be a part of this cool event, you've got the card on your seat, and go ahead and look at that. But do your surveys, email me, connect with me. I would love to talk more and see where we go. But thank you so much. I appreciate you coming.